guys, welcome back to another math lesson. Thank you to all of my loyal viewers each week. I know there's about 6 of you, so that's great. Our number starter for today is to practice what we learned yesterday, which was dividing by partitioning. Have a go at solving this division equation by dividing by partitioning. You can pause me and then email me the answer and I will let you know if you're correct. Our learning intention for today is to divide whole and decimal numbers by powers of 10, which are 10, 100, and 1,000. If you remember, we did this last week where we did multiplying and we did touch on a bit of division as well. So our success criteria for today is going to be, I can use my knowledge of place value to divide by powers of 10. I can divide mentally using known and related facts. And I know what happens to a number when it is divided by 0, 1, and itself. Just to recap, have a think about last week when we did powers of 10. You might remember, I think it was probably my first or second video that I produced when I showed you how to do this. I had a place value chart up on the screen and there was a lot of moving digits around the place value chart depending on whether we were timesing by 10 or timesing by 1,000 or dividing by 100. So remember, when we multiply, the number becomes larger. And as someone pointed out the other day, this is only when we multiply by a whole number. It's a different story when we have fractions and decimals. So that should really say when we multiply by a whole number, the number becomes larger. When we divide by a whole number, the number becomes smaller. When we divide by 10, each digit moves one place value column to the right. When we divide by 100, each digit moves 2 place value columns to the right. And when we divide by 1,000, each digit moves 3 place value columns to the right. Remember this place value chart from the other day? This will be really helpful. Remember, you can always draw this down in your book or print it off or anything like that, especially as it's got that little helpful hint down the bottom as well. All right, guys, the first example that I'm going to show you today is with the number 2,456. Okay, if I'm going to divide this by 10, I know that I'm going to move each digit one place value column to the right. So 6 ones becomes 10 times smaller into 6 tenths. 5 tens becomes 10 times smaller into 5 ones. 4 hundreds becomes 10 times smaller into 4 tens. And 2 thousands becomes 10 times smaller into 2 hundreds. And the number is 245.6. If I'm then going to divide the original number by, 100, so it was 2,456, then everything would move 2 place value columns from its original position. The 2 was, of course, in the thousands, so 1, 2. The 4 was in the 400s, so it's now 100 times smaller and is 4 ones. The tens was 5 tens, now that's 5 tenths. And the 6 was 6 ones, which is now 6 hundredths. 24.56. And the last one that we're going to do is we're going to divide it by 1,000. There are 3 zeros, so we're going to move each digit 3 place value columns to the right. So 6 goes from 6 ones, becomes 100 times smaller to 6 thousandths. 5 tens becomes 5 hundredths. 4 hundredths becomes 4 tenths. And 2 thousandths becomes 2 ones. 2.456. My next example is with the number 93. First of all, I'm going to divide it by 10, which has 1 0, so every digit moves 1 place value column to the left. So 3 ones becomes 3 tenths, and 9 tens becomes 9 ones, which gives us an answer of 9.3. Then I'm going to take my original number again and I'm going to divide it by 100 this time. So there are 2 zeros, so everything moves 2 place value columns to the right. 3 ones becomes 3 hundredths and 9 tens becomes 9 tenths. There is technically a 0 here because we can say 0.93. The final example is with dividing by 100. So we take our original number and we move it, each digit 3 place value columns to the right. So 3 ones becomes 3 thousandths, 9 tens becomes 9 hundredths, and we need a placeholder 0 there, and our answer is 0.093. My next example is with the number 78.12. First of all, I'm going to divide it by 10, which means that everything moves 1 place value column to the right. 2 hundredths become 2 thousandths, 1 tenth becomes 1 hundredth, 8 ones becomes 8 tenths, and 7 tens becomes 7 ones. Our number is 7.812. If I take my original number, which was 78.12, and divide it by 100, this time I'm moving each digit 2 place value columns to the right. So, I need a tens of thousands column, tens of thousands. So 2 hundredths becomes 2 tens of thousandths, 1 tenth becomes 1,000 thousandths, 8 ones becomes 8 hundredths, and 7 tens becomes 7 tenths. My number is 0.7812. My final one, I'm going to need a hundredths of thousands column, but you can't actually see that there. I'm going to have to redraw it. And of course, everything moves 1 more place to the right, because then we've moved it 3 place value columns from its original place, and we get 0.07812. That's a really small number. All right, I've extended my place value columns a little bit further this time because I know I've got some bigger numbers coming up. Next, I'm going to show you with the number 1.347. I think I'm going to need to go even further actually this time. We're going to divide it by 10 first of all, where every digit moves 1 place value column to the right. So 7 thousandths becomes 7 tens of thousandths, 4 hundredths become 4 thousandths, 3 tenths becomes 3 hundredths, and 1 becomes 1 tenth. So our number is 0.1347. If I divide that original number by 100 this time, each digit moves 2 place value columns to the left from its original position. So 7 thousandths becomes 7 hundredths of thousandths, 4 hundredths becomes 4 tens of thousandths, 3 tenths becomes 3 thousandths, 1 becomes 1 hundredth. We need a placeholder 0 for the tenths and the ones as well, and our number is 0.01347. My place value column doesn't actually go far enough for this one, so spoiler alert, this will actually be my number, 0.001347, when I divide it by 1,000, which is even smaller than the previous number. All right, my next example is with a really big number, which is 5,372,000. There. Oops. All right, so first of all, I'm going to divide it by 10, which means that every digit in the number moves 1 place value column to the right. So it's becoming 10 times smaller. All those zeros move down. 2 thousandths becomes 2 hundredths. 7 tens of thousands becomes thousands. 300 thousands becomes 3 10 thousands, and 5 millions becomes 500 thousands. Our number ends up being 537,200. If I was to take that original number from the start,
each digit would need, and divide it by 100, sorry, each digit would move 2 place value columns to the right because there are 2 zeros in 100. So starting with the 0 that was here, it's another 0, and that one, all the zeros have moved down 2 place value columns. The 2000s becomes 2 tens, the 7 tens of thousands becomes 700, the 300,000s become 3,000s, and the 5 millions becomes 5 tens of thousands. You're then left with 53,720. Can you see a bit of a pattern here? Hopefully you can. The last example is with dividing by 1,000, so you guessed it, everything moves 3 place value columns to the right. The zeros, 1, 2, 3, here, 3 zeros. Ooh, it's gonna fall down. And then the 2, what does it start off with here? 2,000s becomes 2 ones, the 7 tens of thousands becomes 7 tens, the 300,000s becomes 3 hundreds, and the 5 millions has become 5 thousands. Sad. Our number is 5,372, just like that. The final example that I want to share with you guys today is with 823.5. First of all, we're going to divide it by 10, which means that every digit in the number moves 1 place value column to the right. So 5 tenths becomes 5 hundredths, 3 ones becomes 3 tenths, 2 tens becomes 2 ones, and 8 hundredths becomes 8 tens, and we end up with 82.35. Then if we were going to divide it by 100, each one needs to move an extra 1 because we've already moved 1. There are 2 zeros. We should have moved 2, but we're just going to move an extra 1 down because I feel like this is going to fall down any second now. This is Patrick's dodgy handiwork. If I've divided my original number by 100, I would end up with 8.235. And spoiler alert, if I divided it by 1,000, everything's going to move 3 from the original place. So this is becoming 5 thousandths, 3, no, that's already what it was. 5 tens of thousands, 3 thousandths, 2 hundredths, 8 tenths, and our number is 0.8235.
All right, guys, I hope that was helpful for you. Sorry about my little technical difficulty there. Our success criteria for today has been I can use my knowledge of place value to divide by powers of 10. I can divide mentally using known and related facts. And I know what happens to a number when it is divided by 0, 1, and itself. If you'd like further practice, there is a resource on the board there. I'll link it on the assignment. Have a think. Can you divide by tens of thousands now? What about 100,000 or a million? What would happen? Big hint, it's the same thing, just more place value columns to the right. Here are your Mathletics tasks for today. They are super duper related to what we've been learning about, so hopefully you'll be able to practice some of those skills that you've learned today.